Hi, my name is Bud Ham, and I'm going to talk to you for the next few minutes about a subject very important to all of us, self-image and self-image improvement. First, I guess we might consider, what is self-image? What are we really talking about when we are discussing this topic which has been written about a great deal, and I think there are a number of different ways of looking at. First, I guess we could say that self-image is a snapshot of us frozen in time. A snapshot that sort of is our image of how we are in a particular role, in a particular situation. I must say now that we have many self-images. As an example, I have a self-image for each of the roles I fulfill in my busy life. I have an image of the kind of consultant and lecturer I am to dentistry. I have an image of the kind of father I am to my 5 children. I have another image of the kind of husband I am to my very lucky wife. In short, I have an image for every role that I fulfill in my life, and so do you. Why should we study self-image? Well, I guess one of the things that all of us are concerned with is personal growth, and how can we learn to be a more fully functioning human being. Now, if we're going to be concerned about our personal growth, we must understand that for growth, change is required. And before you and I can change, a couple of things are very, very important. We must first become aware of what it is we would like to change. And secondly, we must be accepting that this behavior is ours. In other words, we must sort of own what we want to change, or little can happen. You know, Carl Rogers, who in my opinion is one of the foremost living humanistic psychologists today, has said that personal growth and change is a natural human tendency. Humanistic psychology says very clearly that mankind strives to become more, that we are a learning, growing organism. It also says, in Carl Rogers' words, that if we become aware and if we accept and we own the behavior, that's just about all we need to do to grow. That the natural human tendencies will cause positive change once we own something about us that we would like to have changed. Now let's talk for a moment about how self-image is developed. And most of us, I'm sure, realize that many of the things that happen to us during our formative years have a definite influence on us psychologically later in life. And this is also true of self-image. Many of the things that influence the way I see me are things from my childhood. But on the other hand, we also must realize that self-image is a constantly changing thing. And we also must realize that self-image is almost always conferred upon us by others. Sidney Girard, in his book, The Transparent Self, talks about this very well. And he says very, very definitely that the only way I can know me is through the eyes of other people. Now, if that's so, and I do believe it is so, then I must be greatly concerned about self-disclosure. In other words, if I am going to have an accurate self-image, and if I can only know me through your eyes, I must let you know me. I must be willing to disclose of myself to you. I must let you know what my fears and my aspirations are, what my goals are. I must share my value system with you. And the more I do that, the more likely I can have an accurate self-image because of feedback I will get from others around me. Now I want to talk about 2 major areas of self-image. And the first one I'd like to talk about is the accuracy of self-image. And if I were to draw a circle here on the board, and let that circle represent how I see me, we can say that that would be representative of my self-image in this particular role or particular situation. Now, if I have another circle off to the side that represents how others see me, we can say with this diagram that I have a very inaccurate self-image because there is no overlap. If you see me completely differently from the way I see myself in any situation, then I probably have a very inaccurate self-image. Oh, to be sure, you aren't going to see me completely accurately either. You have your biases and your prejudices and your lack of information and all of these things which are going to cause your image of me to be somewhat inaccurate. But it is quite safe to assume that if I see myself much the same way that you see me, in other words, if there is a very high degree of congruence or overlap in these two images, it's fairly safe to assume that I have a fairly accurate image of myself. Now, we need to talk about how can we go about improving the accuracy of self-image. Well, first let me say that it should be a never-ending process as long as we live. We should always be gathering information, gathering data from every source available to us about how we are doing, so we can know ourselves better. There are two primary sources of this information. One source is the things we do. We get feedback from activities. And the other source of information is the people we do things with. That is another source of information about how we are doing. And from these major sources of information, if we really gather this information to us, if we set up conditions that will allow us to receive this information, it can be very beneficial in helping us on a continuing basis to improve the accuracy of our self-image. I very badly need to know me. And I know me one way, through my successes and my failures in terms of things that I do. Now, we are all aware that we have activities and we have tasks to perform and all sorts of things, and if we can just broadly define these into two categories. Let's say we say that we can define these into the category of success or failure. And I believe that there is information about how we are doing in both of these two categories. We need to look at our successes. When we do something that turns out right, we need to study it, we need to analyze it, we need to think about it. Why did I win? Why was I successful that time? And that will give us a greater probability of knowing how to behave in a similar situation the next time when we're faced with a similar situation. I also must look at my failures, but here we sometimes fall into a trap. But I need to look at my failures just long enough to decide what I will do differently the next time. The problem is that very often we dwell on our failures. I had the good fortune a couple of years ago to share a lecture platform with John Ralston of the Denver Broncos. And as many of you know, John Ralston is a very big PMA, or a positive mental attitude man. In fact, John Ralston will tell anybody quite straightforwardly that it is inevitable that the Denver Broncos will play in the Super Bowl. And he also says it is inevitable that the Denver Broncos will win. Well, he has the town convinced of that. I'm from Denver, and you can't get a ticket for the next 5 years. Now, if John just gets the team convinced of that, I think we'll go somewhere. And I believe he's on the road to getting that done. But John said something in this lecture that I heard him give that has really stayed with me. He said, you know, the most wealthy person in this audience cannot afford for 1 minute the luxury of wallowing in self-pity. And I'm afraid that that sometimes is what happens to us when we look at our failures. We even go so far occasionally as to develop a PLOM syndrome. And that, in short, just stands for poor little old me. If anything can go wrong, I'm sure that it will. Well, when we look at our failures, we need to look at them just long enough to decide what we will do differently the next time, and then sweep them from our minds and not dwell on them. You know, many of you have read the book Psycho-Cybernetics by Maxwell Maltz. And those of you who haven't, I can heartily recommend it to you. And it isn't necessary that you read the whole book, you know, to get his meaning. I know all of you are very, very busy people. But I can suggest to you that if you read the first 3 or 4 chapters and the last 20 pages, that you will get his meaning, and that his meaning will come right straight through to you until it can have an impact on how you program yourself for future success or failure. Let me elaborate on that just a moment. When we're talking about programming ourselves for success or failure, we have to consider the conscious mind. And this is what we are thinking about and is right up there in front of us all the time. But we also must be concerned about our creative mind or our subconscious mind, because our subconscious mind just does what we tell it to do. Maxwell Maltz's idea is that our subconscious mind is a computer, and we program that computer. Now, all of us have talked to computer people, and we know that computer people will tell us, if you put garbage in a computer, you get garbage out of a computer. There's no way that we're going to get roses if you put garbage in. Well, the garbage that Maxwell Maltz is talking about, that we put in our subconscious mind, which is a computer, that garbage is negative thought input. And if we dwell on our failures, if we develop the poor little old me syndrome, feeling sorry for ourselves, wallow in that luxury of self-pity, what we really are doing is programming our subconscious mind to direct future effort toward failure, even though at the conscious level we very badly might want to succeed. We will have great difficulty because of programming our creative mind to direct that future effort toward failure. So it is necessary that we do not dwell on failure. I would suggest to you that any time you have any mind time or daydreaming time or whatever word you want to call it, that you think about the wins that you have had. Think about your successes. Think about the worthwhileness of you as a person. Oh, yeah. Think positively about you and program your subconscious mind to direct your future effort toward success, not failure. This is a proven concept. But that's one source of information we have that can help us improve the accuracy of our self-image. And again, let me say, I believe we have to look at our successes and we have to look at our failures. But let me say one more thing about failures. If we learn one thing from a failure, we take it out of the category of failure forever. If we learn one thing, it is no longer a failure. Think about those things. So we have the accuracy of self-image to be concerned about, and concerned in such a way that we can improve that accuracy of self-image. There are some other things that we can do. Let me suggest to you that sometime when you have a quiet 20 minutes, that you take a blank sheet of tablet paper and just draw a line right down through the center of it. And at the top on one side, you write assets. And at the top on the other side, write liabilities. And as objectively and as honestly and thoroughly as you can, you list your assets. And you list your liabilities as a human being. This by itself can help us gain insights into ourselves. It can give us information, it can clarify our thinking that can help improve the accuracy of our self-image. If you really get gutsy, you might take that to your spouse or to your best friend and ask them if they agree with it. Okay, now let's shift thinking just a little bit and talk about that other major source of information we have that can contribute to the accuracy of our self-image. And that other major source is people. The people we do things with, the people we interact with, the people we work with, the people we live with. And for most of us, this is the greatest untapped resource we have. You know, the very fortunate among us have one or more relationships where the level of trust and caring and understanding is high enough so that we can tell it like it is without fear of damaging the relationship. These relationships don't just happen. They have to be built, and they have to be taken care of. They have to be nurtured. But they're very, very valuable relationships. And when we have these kinds of relationships with people around us, we can receive information about how they see us in many different ways. And when we receive this information about how they see us, then we can go about the process of improving the accuracy of our self-image through feedback from those around us. And again, Sidney Girard says, the only way I can know me is through your eyes. So first I must let you know me, and then I must be sensitive to the feedback you give me. I must do all I can to make it easy for you to communicate feedback to me. Oh, to be sure, I need praise. I need to know the good things that I do. to maintain a healthy level of self-esteem. We all are aware that that's needed. But if I am going to become more than I am, maybe I need more than just your praise. I submit to you that I also need constructive criticism. And that's a very, very tough issue to get into, and in a later tape we're going to talk about how you go about communicating this kind of information in a supportive manner. Now I'd like to sort of shift gears just a little bit and talk about another aspect of self-image. And here we must talk about the positiveness of self-image, or unfortunately, as the case may be, the negativeness of self-image. Now, to be sure, all of us at some time in our lives have felt very inferior, very not okay. And some of us are there right now. Well, it's not too bad to be there. It's only bad if we allow ourselves to stay there. We must intellectually at first accept the premise that we are in charge of our own destiny. We must accept the idea that we have as much control over the positiveness of this self-image as we do the accuracy. And if we work on the accuracy, we certainly can work on the positiveness. We can change this and eliminate it from our being. But it doesn't happen easily or readily. We have to work at it. When we're talking about self-image and being in charge of our own destiny, I think most of us would agree, and our physician friends will tell us, that by far most of the beds in a hospital are filled with diseases and problems that were attitudinally introduced. Well, if that's true, then we think ourselves sick, or we think ourselves well. And I believe that we really will agree with that to a very great extent. Oh, certainly there are some diseases and some accidents that can befall us that maybe we don't think ourselves into. But we do know that it has a profound influence on whether we are sick or well. We also, I think, can intellectually accept the idea that you and I decide whether we are going to be successful or whether we're going to be failures. And this goes back to what Maxwell Maltz says, too. If we think of ourselves as failures, we're probably sure to fail. And if we think of ourselves as winners and successful, we're on the way. So let me suggest to you that when we're talking about self-image, that we start dealing with the reality of our own ability to change to a positive self-image from one that might be somewhat negative. You know, there are reasons why most of us have a negative self-image or at times feel very inferior. And again, a lot of these things are, these feelings are a result of what has happened to us in our childhood, in our younger years. You know, we had to adjust to a society. And a lot of painful learning experiences come from that adjustment. In transaction analysis, which talks a lot about negative self-image and positive self-image, in transaction analysis they tell us quite clearly that there is no such thing as a happy childhood. And that people who do have a positive self-image, who do have the I'm okay, you're okay orientation, have developed it and grown into it. It didn't just happen to them. You know, you and I know people who have had serious things happen to them during their lives, and they have, as a result of this, sort of withdrawn from the world. They sort of withdraw from the reality, and they become bitter, alone, and sad, and lead a fairly joyless existence. Well, we also know other people who have had serious things befall them in their lives, and yet we see them sometime later, and we see them walking down the street with their head held erect, out challenging the world, out meeting the day, and living life to the fullest. We say, wow, there goes someone that has really faced up to their problems. And that's very, very true. They have faced up to their problems, and that's the difference. What is the difference really, though? The difference is that one person decided that they would not let life's problems drag them down and cause them to be unhappy. And another person decided that they were defeated. And it's just about that simple. Well, we need to understand very, very clearly and very succinctly that we are in charge of our own self-image. We can do things to make us like ourselves better. Let me suggest to you that you take a piece of paper now, and that you write down on this piece of paper 3 things that you could do that would make you like yourself better. Just 3 things that you could do that would make you like yourself better. Perhaps it would be lose a few pounds. Perhaps it would be start a jogging or an exercise program. Perhaps it would be cut down on the amount of alcoholic intake. Perhaps it would be stop smoking. Any number of these kinds of things. But let me suggest you list 3 of these things that you could do that would have the effect of improving the positiveness of your self-image. And after you've done that, then let me suggest that you look at your list of 3 and that you place a check mark by one of them. Single out one of them that you will commit to. One of them that you will do. One that will have the effect of helping you like yourself better and be a happier, better adjusted human being. You know, if we take a rifle approach to our problems, we have a much better chance of success than if we try to shotgun them and fix them all at the same time. When we try to do that, we're almost sure to have mediocre success, if any. But if we zero in on one and say, I am going to focus my energies here to correct this area, we have a good chance of winning. I would like to introduce you now to another way of looking at areas of self, and this is called a Johari window. This was developed by 2 fellows named Joe Luft and Harry Ingram. And they call it the Johari window, and that has a rather Far Eastern mysterious sound, but it's just a way of helping you and I get a better handle or a better way of looking at 4 areas of self. You'll notice here that we have here at the top in this area, known to self. And so these 2 boxes in this dimension are things that are known to me. And the windows across this way here are known to others. So let's first talk just about this window right here, known to self and known to others. And what we're really talking about here is my area of public self. And when I am working in the area of my public self, I can be very spontaneous. I can be very free. I can be very open. I don't have to put on airs or try to impress you. And so I believe that all of us could agree that it would be desirable to have a very large area of public self. Let me say that in reality, these squares are not equally sized in our lives. There are some people who have a very large area of public self, and there are some who have a very small area of public self. We'll get around to talking about that in a moment. Next, let's talk about this area over here. This is the window that is unknown to me, but known to others. Here we're talking about my blind self. There are things that you might know about me that I don't know. As an example, if we're working in close facial proximity, you know, I might need some mouth spray. Well, hopefully you'll have the courage to hand it to me if that's what I really do need. But that would be unknown to me but known to you. It's very possible that I might have some mannerisms or behaviors that I really am aware of that are not in my best interest. I might use some words or some phraseology or some mannerisms that turn patients off. And if I do, I need to know that. It might be quite apparent to others. So all of us have an area of blind self. And any time that we can expand the area of public self into the area of blind self by receiving feedback, by receiving opinions about how other people see us, any time that we can reduce our area of blind self, we become a more fully functioning human being. And again, one of the ways we do this is to receive information about how we are doing. It's accuracy of self-image improvement right there. And so I think all of us have a need to develop the relationship, especially with those people around us who work with us and who live with us. Develop a relationship that will allow them to talk to us openly about our strengths as well as our weaknesses. Now let's consider the square down here at the bottom on the right side. This is unknown to others, but also unknown to me, or unknown to self. This is my area of mystery. Mystery self. And for the most part, we don't have to be too concerned about the area of mystery self. All of us have an area of mystery self, but unless we have some serious emotional or mental disorder, we really don't have to be too greatly concerned about it. Thank goodness today, if a person does have a period of depression or emotional or mental problem, it isn't looked upon with the same stigma that it was a few years ago to get some professional help. And that's what we need to do when we do have these things we can't quite cope with. We'd get some professional help and help us gain some insights into the area of mystery self. But for the most part, most of us, as we go through life, and if we are concerned with our own personal growth and work at it, from time to time, we will gain insights into our mystery self, and it will be gradually shrinking as we mature as human beings. Let's talk now about what might be one of the most important areas on this chart. And this is an area that is known to me, but unknown to others, or my area of hidden self. You know, when we're talking about personal growth, we have to be talking about awareness and improvement in self-image in terms of positiveness and accuracy, and this has a great deal to do with our ability to grow as a human being. Unfortunately, there are people, as I said earlier, who have a very large area of hidden self. I'm sure all of us have had the experience of being acquainted with someone for a long period of time, but not really knowing that individual. And it's very possible that no one really knows that individual. If that's so, we can safely assume that that person has a very large area of hidden self. Usually the reason behind people being very, very closed and very guarded and having a large area of hidden self is because of the fear that if you really knew me, you wouldn't love me. And the way that I will protect myself is I will hold you off. I will build a wall around me, and that will protect me from hurt. Usually people who have a very large area of hidden self have been hurt in a love relationship. It could have happened when they were children. It could have happened when they were adults. But any time we have invested our love in another human being, and if that love has been misused or rejected, that very often can cause people to develop a large area of hidden self. And I believe it to be a great tragedy, because they never really experienced the joy of human interaction and human relationships at a deep level. When I was about 12 years old in Florence, Colorado, one of my buddies named Milton Smith and I went to the local Safeway store, and I stole a Milky Way candy bar, and Milton stole a Milky Way candy bar. And so I knew it, and Milton knew it, and the store manager found out about it, and then the town marshal found out about it, and Milton's dad knew about it, and my dad knew about it. Well, I can tell you that I hope the whole world didn't find out about it. There's all the people I wanted to know about, even more. In fact, I had such a large area of hidden self for a while that I didn't even go in another Safeway store until I was 20 years old. Well, you know, all of us have done things in our lives that we are not proud of. You know, it's entirely possible that all of us might have some things in our background or in our area of hidden self that we choose not to disclose to anyone. And that certainly is our prerogative. Certainly is our prerogative. But if we will take the risk of letting those important people know us, those people who are important to us and to our lives, if we will disclose of ourselves to them and let them know us, we can expand our area of public self down into the area of hidden self and be a much freer, much more spontaneous, learning human organism. And this is the thing that relationships are built from. You know, another very important reason why we really should be concerned about public self and about the accuracy and the positiveness of self-image is this. I cannot love you if I do not love myself. I think that every psychologist and psychiatrist in the country would agree with that statement. And we also must understand that I cannot love me if I do not know me. And if Sidney Girard has anything to say, he says the only way I can know me is through your eyes. That implies that I must disclose of myself to you. I must let you know me so then I can know myself, with the probability that I can love myself. Oh, there is a much greater probability And there is a much greater probability that you will love me too if I let you know me. You know, we cannot love what we do not know. And you cannot care for me if you don't know me. So it's important that we be concerned about this idea of self-image, because in a helping profession, it is very, very important that we develop the ability to communicate two kinds of caring. Sure, one is technical, preventive, restorative care in my mouth. That's a very, very important part of the caring that you are concerned with. But there's another kind, the tender, loving caring that must go along with that for you to be truly a successful professional.